imagined shall fall down upon you. It will be a storm of death. But take heed, struggler. Struggle, endure, contend. For that alone is the sword of one who defies death. Do not forget these words.
Shadow of the Erdtree has been out for about 5 days now. Me and others who have been playing alongside me have been having a really good time with the game. I wanted to do a first impressions video, but I noticed that there's been some mixed reviews about the game since it was released. I wanted to talk about two of the biggest issues that the DLC seems to be facing. On PC, it's poor performance, and overall, the difficulty. Now, I got the game on PC since that's the platform I originally bought Elden Ring on, and will say that yes, I have noticed some poor performance here and there. When I boot up the game for the first time, it takes a really long time for the game to load. I have noticed frame buffering during boss fights with more effects going on that have led to me getting killed sometimes. It's definitely not my fault, it's the game's fault, but that's really about it. I haven't had any stuttering while out exploring or anything like that. This is a bit disappointing since the PC launch of Elden Ring faced the same issues in the Stormvale region with all the storm effects, but this is a bit harder for me to overlook because the Armored Core 6 PC version was, from a performance standpoint, one of the best, if not the best, FromSoft PC launch I have played. In my 60 hours of gameplay, I did not encounter a single problem. So to this point, I can see it being a negative, but I have decided to look past those points and I continue to enjoy the game. I acknowledge that this is more important to some players and it is impacting certain users more than others, and I really hope that the team at FromSoft can release a performance patch sooner rather than later. But you can only make a first impression once, and to anyone who has experienced this and dropped the game because of it, I hope that when the game is more stable on PC, you'll revisit it. As far as performance on consoles, I haven't really seen anything glaring, but since my world is PC, I really can't comment on it too much. But that will bring us to the much more controversial point of criticism, the difficulty. Now, difficulty is subjective. What I find difficult and what you find difficult might vary, and in a game like Elden Ring with so many variables, this can mean a lot of different things to different players. I think that the difficulty of the DLC makes sense when you think of the entry point for the DLC. So you had to defeat Radahn and Mohg. Most players will tackle Radahn between levels 40 and 60, but Mohg is an endgame optional boss. So many people could have easily missed this fight entirely if you never did Varre's quest or found the teleporter in the consecrated snowfield. So at minimum, I think FromSoft is assuming that you have at least one maxed out weapon and your character is somewhere in between level 125 and 150. But since farming and leveling up close to max level has been such a popular activity for a lot of players, and in a lot of ways the only way players were able to meet the challenge of Elden Ring's harder bosses, I think that this is completely logical for the difficulty in the DLC to be balanced around this. Now, I'm not sure how some of these people are choosing to engage with the DLC. For me personally, I have fought 2 remembrance bosses and 2 optional bosses, which one felt much more difficult than any other boss I have yet to encounter. I have been doing what I enjoy doing the most, taking my time and exploring. At the time of recording, my character is sitting at 8 Scatman Skadoosh upgrades, and I have more I can use, but I've only been using them when I feel they are necessary. If I encounter a boss down the line that I feel like I'll have a more engaging time with, having more attack and defense, then I'll use them. The only restrictions I'm imposing on myself are no summons, not because I feel like I'm above using them. I find the boss behavior easier to read when it's 1v1. That is my personal preference, and that's how I've been going through the game. The DLC is balanced around the hardest content in the base game and beyond. I don't see how people find this as a detriment. You're telling me that you went through the base game, fought one of the more difficult optional bosses, to then expect what? To steamroll the DLC, get 10 hours of content, then call it overpriced or something? The DLC is balanced around the Shadow Realm blessing. These can be found in various areas and occasionally drop from enemies, encouraging you to engage field enemies in combat, and can be found while exploring. These can be used to give your character boosts in damage and defense percentage. When some of the most popular videos of Elden Ring are some mage walking into a room and comment assuring a boss in 3 seconds or one-shot builds, I fail to see how players are not understanding that the game is trying to tell you to use these. Maybe they should have been more explicit with their description, but how do you pick up something that says this will make you way stronger and turn your nose up at it? If you want your first playthrough of the DLC to be a challenge run and review it based on how developers definitely did not intend that first experience to be, well then congratulations, you just played yourself. Elden Ring gives you so many options to conquer boss fights that are all legit. They are in the game and therefore you should use whatever tools you have at your disposal. All of us are at different skill levels and the developers know this. Summon a random, use spirit ashes, ask other players what tactics they used. All of these are valid ways to engage in the content and should be encouraged more. I see people posting a win of a fight and there's a spirit summon in the boss room and you'll have people commenting, "Oh, did you really beat that boss?" And I get where they're coming from. There's a feeling you get when it's 1v1 and you use your skills to conquer a boss. I get it, but not everyone is going to get that. And if players feel like going through the game using summons works for them, then it works. Just like the old argument about difficulty settings in FromSoft games, this is nothing new. There are ways to make the game feel more manageable for yourself. Leave your ego at the door and just try to enjoy the game. And for anyone gatekeeping, maybe don't. When I first played Dark Souls 1, I found the community extremely accepting. It was so much more niche back then that just having some random person deciding on their own to pick up the game must have been more novel. Now, not so much. Instead of encouraging people, they are torn down for the way that they play instead of just being able to see the content of the game themselves. Where now people say skill issue or get good, more times people would ask what weapon you were using, what was your stat spread, where have you explored, not outright telling you how to play, but just as a way to gauge how you are interacting with the content. Difficulty is subjective, but our attitudes towards that difficulty is not. Instead of bemoaning the challenge, we should embrace it. FromSoft gives us the privilege of not catering to modern gaming standards and giving us a sense of rewarding accomplishment few games can. There used to be a saying, "Don't you dare go hollow," meaning don't give up. Continue to struggle until you meet the challenge and we'll be here to back you up along the way. That's just how I see it. If you find the boss's movesets or anything like that just not be to your liking, then that's your opinion and that's totally fine. I'm not here to try to convince you that the bosses are amazing or good. It's just that I've been enjoying it, and when I meet a challenge, I just do what I can to overcome that. I've beaten every Souls game to date with this attitude, and I'll continue to use it going forward. One of the more fun parts of the DLC for me has been experimentation. A lot of times with a Souls playthrough, I'll have my play style. I never change, I never do anything different. I just keep going in and, bash your head against the brick wall. But in the DLC, I've tried different tactics. With the deflecting tier, I've tried guard countering for the very first time, and it's been pretty fun sometimes. I've been more flexible in this playthrough. It kind of reminds me of Armored Core a little bit. You come up to something with a pulse shield, you try pulse weapons. The game encourages you to try different things out. Not so much in Elden Ring since the upgrade materials are so scarce. Even though in the DLC they are more generous, they drop off a lot of things, but it's not like being able to buy a weapon kit and then sell it back for the same price, if you know what I mean. One of my favorite setups lately has been using this Black Knight Great Hammer, the deflecting tier, and prayerful strikes. It's so fun to be able to pull off a deflect, get this really cool, unique guard counter attack that the hammer gets, and then if I take any damage trying to get the deflect timing down, I could just use prayerful strikes, get my health back, and stay in the pocket of the fight. I don't have to disengage to go heal. The game gives you so many tools. It's like, here, use us. Please use these things. I mean, on my first playthrough, I didn't even know that you could change out the Ashes of War. I thought that it was a permanent thing, and I didn't want to swap something on my greatsword for fear of losing that Ash of War. It wasn't until like the end of the game that I found out that you could do that. So for anybody having a really hard time, I would encourage experimentation. Try different things out. You might have fun with it. I never really understood taking the difficulty in terms of criticizing a video game. Like when I reviewed Tears of the Kingdom, I never stated the game's difficulty as a detriment. I found it extremely easy. Breeze walked through the combat, nothing stopped me. But I didn't think that that was a point of criticism. I know that this game appeals to so many people, and they're not catering to the 1% of people who could breeze through the combat. I know this, and I'm not taking it as a detriment. But when the coins flipped, I can also see, well, this is really difficult, but it wasn't wasn't made with me in mind, and I'm not going to take it down because other people enjoy it for these reasons. Just for me personally, this is how I feel about it. But anyway, that's going to do it for this one. I'm about 40 hours into the DLC, and I think I'm about halfway done. I've just been really enjoying taking my time and exploring it. This world is so interesting, and I just like walking around it. But anyway, let me know how you're enjoying the DLC, and I'll see you in the next one.